Chika, Unigwe, and others across the house. And of course, it is our pleasure also to have his father is around. Chief Honorable Fred Unigwe, Ochaya. Honorable is always honorable, any day, any time. Permit me also to welcome Professor Paul Okonkwo and the wife, Rena Okonkwo, of the Center of Memories. Professor Richard Okafor and the wife, Dr. Mrs. Cecilia Okafor, is also in our midst. Professor Chika and Ibeza, thank you for coming. Welcome. Also in our midst is Engineer Chris Okoye. Thank you also for coming. Remember that Nkata is in partnership with Emory and Enugu Sports Club and also Urban Radio. A round of applause for us also. Permit me also to introduce those behind the machine gun. Patrick Okibo and Nana Ude. Welcome to Nkata. May God bless you all as you listen. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, again, welcome to the November 2019 Nkata Umuibe, organized by the Center for Memories with great support from Enugu Sports Club. The Center for Memories is a group that aims to become a repository of Igbo memories, Igbo culture, Igbo traditions. It's a not-for-profit organization. There are about 5 of us, who are currently holding this organization in trust for Ndi Igbo. Ndidi Okonkwo Nguneli, who is not here today. Nkem Okeke, Udo Jude Ilo, and Nkiru Abo Opareke, and myself, Patrick Okibo. On our board of advisors, we've got eminent Nigerians, with the chair as the Obi of Onitsha. We've been in operations since December of 2017, and some of the initiatives of the center include, from time to time, we put together exhibitions that try to highlight the culture of our people. We have an exhibition that's currently going on at the center, number 2 Ogu Close, off Umoji Street, Independence Layout. We also have a number of other initiatives like Nkata Umuibe, which holds every first Friday. And then Nana will speak a little bit more about this particular initiative and also introduce our speaker. We have Nzuko Umuaka, which is an Nkata Umuibe for the children. And that holds every month as well at the center. The center organizes a number of other programs, like a monthly book club. Interestingly, and purely by coincidence, the book we are reading this month is also authored by Chika, Unigwe, on Black Sister Street. A round of applause for her. We are very grateful to all of our volunteers, including those who have just completed their youth service and will be leaving Enugu for their other posts. We thank you very much. And those who are still here, we thank you for your continued work at the center. We thank everyone who's supported us in one way or the other, either by donating money or presenting us with artifacts that we're piecing together in this effort to tell our story. There are a number of other people I'd like to mention, like Fidelity Bank, that donated a library at the center, Oba Akwụkwọ Ụmụaka, which is a children's library. Yes, a round of applause for them. Where we hope that little children growing up in Enugu will find time to visit. We're currently doing a book drive, so if you've got books that you want, children's books that you want to donate to the library, please give us a call and we figure out how to pick them up. And we thank all the aunties, who come by to spend time with the children. And on that note, let me add one last thing. A few decades ago, here in a coal mine in Eva Valley, a number of coal miners rose in protest against the poor wages and poor welfare. And that led to the colonial masters at the time murdering a number of these coal miners. And on the 16th of this month, we are going to have a memorial in honor of the coal miners. More information will be shared with you, especially if we got your email address. But we're going to have a full-day event to commemorate that day because it's part of our collective memories as Igbo. I've been given something to read here, but I don't have my glasses, so I definitely cannot see what's written on this sheet of paper. So whatever is written on it has been recognized. I've been asked to recognize Honorable Ugochukwu Agbala. Please, a round of applause for him. By the way, he's got some books at the registration point, I believe. Yeah, so please, on your way out, you can check that out. But thank you so much. Without further ado, permit me to invite my co-traveler, Nana Ude, who's the convener of Nkata Umuibe, to tell us a bit more about the program and then invite our guest speaker. A round of applause for Nana.
Yeah, so since May last year, we convene here on the first Friday of every month to have this dialogue around issues that are of very paramount importance to us as a people. This edition will be our 18th in that series. I don't know if we have anybody here who has been here for the 18 editions that we've had. But I know that there are some of you here who have been around for most of the programs. And so we've invited a few of our brightest and our best to come here and share with us their perspective, their insights, their experiences on the Igbo nation, the Igbo society, in a bid to convey to our young people our narrative. I know today's edition is going to discuss our narrative, but this is what we have tried to do here since May last year. We've had Professor Chede Odenkalo, he did the first one. We've had Professor Oken Dibe, we've had Chika Odua, Dike Chukwumerije, John Nyanwodo, Ike Chioke, Chinenye Mbauzuku, Chichiane Agolokoye, quite a lot of our best around the world who have offered to come here and just stand here and discuss with us on those issues related to values, family, politics, technology, economy, enterprise, just you name it, as it just affects the entire Igbo nation. We've also had Professor Philip Effiong, who was here in August, and we had a very good time out here with him. And so today is our 18th edition, and we are happy to have here with us another distinguished daughter of Ali Igbo. She's not just a distinguished daughter of Ali Igbo, she's also one of those very few speakers here who had the privilege to, like me, attend a federal government college. She went to FGGC Abuja, and thereafter she did her first degree in University of Nigeria in Soka, and then a master's in Catholic University of Leuven, and then a PhD in University of Leiden. Then she continued her writing career in the United States and Belgium. She's currently creative director of the Awele Creative Trust, And she was the Bonderman Professor of Writing at Brown University, Rhode Island in the USA. She's won many prizes and many awards. Too many I can't name all, but just permit me to mention a few of them. 2003, she won the BBC short story competition for the short story, Borrowed Smile. In 2004, she won the Kane Prize for African Writing for the short story, The Secret. In 2012, she won the big one, the NLNG Prize for Literature, for her novel On Black Sister Street, which Patrick just announced will be the book that we are going to read at the CFM this month. She has also received many fellowships, too long for me to mention. And she has a lot of books in her name. The Phoenix, Born in Nigeria, On Black Sister Street, Night Dancer, EJ at School, A Rainbow for Dinner, and just recently, Better Never Than Late. You've read her, you've probably heard a lot about her. She's now here in flesh and blood. So, Ndebai, permit me to welcome to this podium our own daughter, Professor Chika Unigwe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nana. I was shortlisted for the Kane Prize. I didn't win it, so just, correction. But thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. Thank you for having me here. Thank you to Sports Club for hosting this. Ndị be anyị ekene m unu. Igbo nọ n'ụlọ na Igbo pụrụ ije unu ga-adị. Ụmụnne m mma mmanụ. I'm also really grateful that my father, Chiaya, who turned 90 this year, is here. With his brother, my uncle, my other daddy, Nnabunyo Osumeni. Thank you for being here and supporting me. And all my friends from Anna who happen to be in town and who are also here. Gochukwu Agbala, Wole Okediron. Thank you. Professor Akachi Ezigbo, thank you all very much for being here. And Yokwinna, thank you too. My non-Igbo brothers and sisters, greetings, and thank you for having me here today. It's a great honor to be a guest of Nzuko Umibe series, following in the footsteps of other speakers, many of whom I've admired for years, and others whose works I've only recently discovered through Nzuko Umibe. Patrick, Nana, you're doing great work. I'm particularly pleased to be back in Enugu. I was born and raised here, and no matter how long I've been away, every time I return, I feel the air shift, especially for me. I have wonderful memories of growing up in this city. Sadly, some of the places I knew and loved as a child have given way to residential estates, shopping malls, or have fallen into regrettable disuse. Family has always been very important to my parents, and growing up, we would drive with my mother to her village, Lokbanta in Abia State, every Sunday afternoon to visit my grandparents, stay long enough to have an early dinner, and drive back to Enugu. And twice a year, at Christmas and Afiolo, like many others, we would make the longer drive down, which my father did every weekend, to our ancestral home, Osumeni. I remember the guava-infused scent of those days, the sounds of women greeting each other on their way to a corso, the dust we raised as we ran from masquerades. But most of all, I remember the freedom we took for granted in the way people do when there is little to fear. Trekking the length of the village with my sister Blessing and our co-returnee friends and cousins. So family has always been very important to my parents, and growing up, we would drive with my mother to her village, Lokbanta, in Abia State, every Sunday afternoon to visit my grandparents, stay long enough to have an early dinner, and drive back to Enugu. And twice a year, at Christmas and Afiolo, like many others, we would make the longer drive down, which my father did every weekend, to our ancestral home, Osumeni. I remember the guava-infused scent of those days, the sounds of women greeting each other on their way to a corso, the dust we raised as we ran from masquerades. Most of all, I remember the freedom we took for granted in the way people do when there is little to fear. trekking the length of the village with my sister Blessing and our co-returnee friends and cousins, riding my chopper or racing my cousin Chukuma on his. And when we became older and able to drive, Blessing and I would pile into a car with my brother or with my cousin driving and head out to nearby Opo or Amichi or Nnewi for some Isiewu or Nchi. Our parents didn't know about these outings. Often, my uncle or my dad would have tasked my cousin or my brother with fueling the car, and the four of us would just disappear for many delightful hours, returning to parents upset that an errand of a few minutes had somehow morphed into us being away for far longer. They were upset, but they were never worried. They did not think that we had been kidnapped by some ransom-demanding thugs or attacked by herdsmen. And this wasn't that terribly long ago, relatively speaking. This was in the early 90s, and even then, our parents complained that Nigeria was in a downward spiral, that things were bad, blissfully unaware of the shape of the horrors yet to come, the horrors that are here with us today. Our nation is in a crisis. Aligbo especially is in a crisis, and we cannot ostrich our heads in the sand out of it. We can't pretend that the crisis is not urgent when we are confronted with it almost on a daily basis. 3 months ago, the US authorities indicted 80 people for wire fraud and for swindling millions of dollars from US businesses and individuals. 77 are Nigerian, and 74 of the 77 Bundi Igbo. According to Abike Dabiri, of the 21 Nigerians on death row for drug crimes in Indonesia, 20 are from Anambra State. 5 of 5 men arrested for stealing the equivalent of over 220 million naira from a bureau de change in Dubai are young Igbo men. We all remember the 2017 drug-related shooting in Ozobolo Church. In a 2017 interview with the Nigerian Punch, the then president of the Nigerian Union South Africa, Mr. Ikechukwu Anyene, considered to the journalist interviewing him that Ndi Igbo made up the bulk of Nigerians arrested in South Africa on drug-related charges. These men, and sometimes women, the Igbo 419ers, the drug pushers, the robbers, are not invisible. They are not shy about showing off their wealth. And because they crave the attention and adulation that affluence brings, right about this time of the year, almost December, they are getting ready to swarm our villages and towns. They will return from China, Malaysia, and South Africa, and wherever else with ridiculous nicknames and other crass displays of their arrival. Videos will go viral of them in churches thanking Baba God for blessing them. At parties, christening each other with expensive champagne, spraying money, foreign currency like confetti. And we will witness our youth retweet the videos and ask on social media, hey God, when? Not how, but when, which in itself is illustrative. Drug peddlers, 419ers, swindlers, people without a kobo to their names, suddenly catapulting out of nowhere with massive wealth, soiling the nation's reputation. These are the dominant narratives. But we are causing our own pain by contributing to and enabling these narratives to move from the margins to the center. Ndi Igbo as drug peddlers, 419ers, swindlers. These stories are not lies, but they are not representative of our people, and they are certainly not narratives that we should allow to define us as Ndi Igbo. The significant thing about narratives is that they have the power to shape our notions of who we are, and not just what others think of us. The African-American historian and Pan-Africanist J.H. Clark said famously that to control a people, you must first control what they think about themselves and how they regard their history and culture. And when your conqueror makes you ashamed of your culture and your history, he needs no prison walls and no chains to hold you, end of quote. Our ideas of beauty, of race, of civilization, and so on are based on the narratives that were told of us by those with the power to shape and share those narratives. And they, in turn, have become the narratives that we tell ourselves of ourselves. Why would an Igbo child tell another that eating apple is bush, for example? Or that eating with your fingers is bush? Or that speaking Igbo is bush? Why would an Igbo man come on Twitter, as someone did recently, and say what a pity it is that one of our Igbo leaders has an Igbo accent? Why have we accepted that calling an Igbo man Okoro is one of the most terrible insults to hurl at him? It is because over the years, we have allowed, not always willingly I must add, we have allowed others to calibrate what is bush and what is not, what is desirable and what is not. For years, even though our traditional wrapper looks better on full-bodied women, we swallowed the myth that a certain body shape is preferable. Now, with the body positivism movement being championed by full-bodied women in the West, the body shape meant for Imakwa is again being touted as beautiful. The narratives that we have allowed to dominate tell us to look elsewhere, outside of us, for what we ought to find desirable. We do not see the irony in overzealous pastors and their acolytes destroying what should be our World Heritage sites and preaching a total eradication of our traditional festivals in some cases, going as far sometimes as abandoning or changing their names for being heathenish, but who then live quite happily in a world where days of the week are named after European gods. Like Achebe would say, Ofo golabore fofu. James Baldwin, the African-American writer, sums up the danger of allowing someone else have control of your narrative when he said that you've got to tell the world how to treat you, because if the world tells you how you're going to be treated, you're in trouble, end of quote. This is why we need to tell our own stories, to begin to reclaim our own narrative, to reassert our values as markers of our Igbo identity, and to push those narratives out. But what are those values? What are our Igbo values? It is said that wisdom is the beginning of knowledge, but I think that's wrong. Knowledge, self-knowledge, is where wisdom really starts. What is Igbo identity? As a storyteller, and as one both interested and invested in words, I look for answers in language. To discover what a people hold dear, their worldview, we look for clues in their language, what words they deploy to say the things they do. So for example, my mother-in-law, who is Belgian, doesn't understand why I say sorry to her for things that are not my fault. Like, boys, that's not your fault. Like, I know, I'm just saying sorry because, it's what we do, I've tried to explain to her that the sorry isn't me accepting personal responsibility for her maybe spilling coffee or stubbing her toe, for example, but rather me acknowledging our shared humanity. Sorry is a very inadequate translation we use for ndo, which encompasses an entire worldview that says, I suffer because you suffer. I empathize with you. No one needs to explain sorry to an Igbo person or to a Nigerian even, because our cultures are collectivist. The English, whose worldview is more individualistic and who claim a man's home is his castle, a proverb which underscores privacy in a way that is alien to our Igbo culture, could not be expected to have a competent translation of ndo, a word that emphasizes interconnectedness in a way that Westerners find difficult to grasp naturally. So using language as our clue, what does it mean to be Igbo? We'll begin with the most important, the essence of what we are called, Madu. In Abriba dialect, the word for man is Onyife, a person of light. In Father Emmanuel Edes towards an Igbo metaphysics, he splits the word Madu into its two components, Madu or Mmadi, the good that is, or let goodness be. We can therefore infer that goodness and light, both of which mean the same thing really, are at the core of being an Igbo human. Since these imply morality, we can also say that morality is an integral part of being Igbo. We say Mmadu bụ chi ibe ya, with the understanding that chi is intrinsically good. When we are overwhelmed with someone's goodness, we say Opuka Mmadu. They are very human. When people deviate from the norm, we begin to use the qualifier Ajo Mmadu or Ezigbo Mmadu to make the distinction from Ajo Mmadu. None of the other two languages I speak has that intrinsic goodness of man embedded in their word for man as to make good redundant. In English, you would never say he's so human, in the same way we would say in Igbo that onya abuka mmadu. To fully embody the goodness and light, to fully become Igbo, we must therefore begin to reclaim the cultural values that Igbo have always espoused as markers of Igbo identity. These values, condensed and referred to in a Facebook post by an Igbo group, Odenibo, as the 7 pillars of Igbo republicanism. Igbo Botu, unity. Igbo Bike, cooperation. Onye wele ihe onye ọzọ, thou shalt not steal. Ịgba mbọ, industry. Onye ayala nwanne ya, brotherhood. Ọfọ n'ogu, moral authority and righteousness. Igbo enwe eze, communal leadership based on meritocratic gerontocracy. All these values encourage communality and collective responsibility. I am because you are. What affects one affects us all. And these values were the catalyst for the improvement unions which sprouted all over Igbo land in the 30s and 40s, and which by 1964 had established 38 secondary schools all over Ali-Igbo. I am because you are. How have we veered so far from our traditional Igbo values that we have allowed greed and fraud and corruption and conspicuous consumption to identify us? Where did the rain begin to fall on us? So I say, let us search for the beginning of this reign in colonization. And it's impossible for me to trace it to colonization without referencing Achebe's Things Fall Apart, the canonical text of how the clouds for the rains began to gather. In Things Fall Apart, for those who haven't read it, Okonkwo has no respect for his father, Unoka, and not even in death, because Unoka was a lazy man. While other men worked, Okonkwo complains, his father stayed home and drank and played the flute. Unoka's reputation as a lazy man haunts Okonkwo throughout the novel and is the single most important motivation for Okonkwo to sometimes take unpopular decisions. A man who sat at home and twirled his thumb, who could not grow his akonoba because he would not work, was not a man worthy of respect. A man's wealth was often commensurate to how hard he was prepared to work and how blessed he was. The political system in Ali-Igbo was communal and collective, at odds when the British came with the British indirect rule system. And so the colonial authorities usurped the system and created Kotumas and warrant chiefs. Arguably, corruption started with the Kotumas who took bribes to influence cases and the quality of their translations. And with the warrant chiefs who did not have traditional authority to rule, but possessed power through the British, who had both the yam and the knife. These warrant chiefs, not immune to the corruption of power, became the new ruling class. The court messengers and the warrant chiefs did not have to work hard on the farm, did not have to toil to become wealthy. For the first time, the wealthiest men did not necessarily have to be the ones who had the bountiest harvests. The currency of respect naturally began to change around this time. Perhaps some might say that I'm reaching, that we had years of relative integrity when hard work, and not necessarily manual labor, hard work and integrity were respected. Years when criminals were not rewarded in Ali-Igbo with chieftaincy titles and were not given front row pews in churches. And maybe they're right. Maybe I should seek for the genesis of the rot in the SAP years from the mid-1980s. An old friend of mine writes eloquently in the UK Guardian of his father, a civil servant physician, who bought a new Volkswagen in 1994. No, who bought a new Volkswagen in 1984. The next time his father bought a car, we assume the next time he could afford to buy one was about 17 years later. A second-hand 1992 model Honda Accord shipped from Europe. Volkswagen of Nigeria, like many other industries, hadn't survived SAP. My friend's story will be familiar to anyone who lived through the fiasco that was SAP. The government's policies completely eroded the middle class and enshrined corruption as a way of life. People who had worked all their lives could no longer count on getting good pensions. And civil servants, people who earned money honestly, could no longer afford the lifestyles that they had been used to. Our universities became desolate. Scholars and intellectualism were discouraged. Politicians and their cronies who had direct access to the government became the new wealthy class. And in Alibo, it helped to create the mess we are still dealing with now. Ndị Igbo si na mmụọ onye na-efe na-egbu ya. A culture that has always respected wealth because it was taken for granted that a man became wealthy by doing honest work, in this new dispensation, seems to be struggling to find ways to accept the wealth but not the bearer of it. We have stopped asking for one source of wealth. But there's no need crying over spilled palm wine. It behooves us to mop up the mess and start again. And how do we do this? How do we begin to redefine and reclaim Igbo values so that mpu, corruption, and celebration of illicit wealth are things that are no longer allowed to define us? How do we put the Mma back into Mmadu, the Ife back into Onye Ife? How do we seize back the narrative of Igbo identity to center our core values? On social media, on TV, on the streets, in books, in newspapers, there is no shortage of ways and people who will tell our story should we choose not to tell it. So we must use these same spaces to center narratives that best define us. And I know from personal experience how what we consume, the books we read and the films we watch, affects how we feel about ourselves. Our writers, our creative artists should continue producing works that center the Igbo worldview. In recent years, Chikozie Obioma's brilliant Orchestra of Minorities and Akweke Emezi's Fresh Water, which center Igbo cosmology in a contemporary world, have done that. Our Igbo Nollywood directors and producers and scriptwriters should tell our Igbo stories that, while not romanticizing Alibo, privilege another sort of narrative to the dominant one. Nnaji's Lionheart set in Enugu is a good example and shows what is possible when intentionality and ownership of the means of production collide. Our Igbo musicians, Fino, Umobilibo, Flavor, and so many others who sing in Igbo, who therefore center our language in parties and at airports around the world, create a sense of pride in our identity, and could take it further by singing lyrics that celebrate the very best of that identity. Alibo should invest in Igbo-centered publishing, Igbo newspapers, for example. Igbo books should be available in our libraries, where these libraries exist, to boost interest in the reading of it. But we must be careful too. I remember reading a book written by an Igbo woman years ago, where the protagonist was said to have done well because Onazi Asu Igbo, Nani Beke Onasu, which is quite a ridiculous thing to see, in a book written in Igbo, celebrating Igbo-ness, that the pinnacle of success is someone who no longer speaks Igbo, but only speaks English. And I think this is the reason why the work really must begin at home, in our homes. Our people say, we need to, in our individual homes, begin to recalibrate markers of success for our children. I remember reading an interview with a Nigerian-British actor, Chiwetale Ejiofor, where he said that a journalist told his mother that she must be really, really proud of her son who was a star. The mother replied that her daughter, who just graduated from a top college, was the star, before saying that she was proud of both of them. Success shouldn't just be about how much one is bringing in, but how one maximizes their talents and gifts to live a life of fulfillment. Where the only marker of success is money, people are tempted to resort to whatever means to make it. Wealth in itself is not bad. After all, we name our children Egodi. Our Igbo culture does not shun wealth. That it was earned honestly was taken as a given. It is the get it by all means wealth that has saturated our communities that we must begin to shun and teach our children to shun as well. Ezia Fakako. Ezia Fakaku or Ezia Fakego It seems to me that our spiritual and community leaders have forgotten these two in this era of money being the be-all and end-all. We're all witnesses to how often these men of dubious characters are given titles in our villages and towns, Eze this and Ichie that. How often they are addressed as prophets and pastors, making a mockery of the positions that they hold. And we are responsible for enabling them by allowing them avenues to legitimize themselves and to whitewash their wealth by building community centers and places of worship. We should be strong enough and bold enough to let them know that Alibo is not in the business of whitewashing money. Our community centers and churches should not be built by one person who has the money to throw around, especially if that money was not earned honestly. And in the past, to the best of my knowledge, these centers were built with communal effort so that everybody felt a sense of ownership. No one person could lay claim to it, and so no one person was above the authority of those places. You can't scold an erring man with his food in your mouth. We need to be intentionally minded about creating more inclusive spaces for cross-sector conversations and supporting those that already exist, like Nkata and Society of Igbo Professionals. Spaces that task us, not just to palaver, but also to reflect on where we have strayed and discuss ways to get back on the right path. We must tell our own stories, beat our own drums, magnify the achievements of Igbo across the globe by supporting projects like this one, like Chika Reze's Igbo blog, Okporo Blogspot, Juliet Kego and Ifi Melodies Eku Igbo on Twitter, Yvonne Mbanefo's and Luisa Ibunike's Igbo Conference, Golibe Festival, and also by creating more spaces like this for centering Igbo culture, celebrating Igbo excellence, profiling alternative role models for our youth. We should work at owning the means of production so that we are better able to disseminate the narratives we choose to. Even as we join a globalizing world, we should not lose sight of our own local traditions. We should watch against diluting our Iliji and Afiolu so much that they lose their significance. Those of us in the positions to do so should encourage our ministries of culture, education, and information to pick up the mantle and join in the fight for reclaiming and owning our narratives as they had in the past. For example, Avenue College of Education had the magazine Igbo Gadi, completely written in Igbo. And from 1979 to 1986, Imo State had the excellent Anu, a magazine on Igbo culture, whose main purpose, according to its editorial, was to recover, document, analyze, and give information about Igbo culture. And to our shame, of the 12 libraries who have copies of this magazine still available, 11 are in the United States, and the 12th is at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. There is none in Nigeria. We've allowed these narratives to take root. Manata Bubo. Let us begin now to Mezi Alibo. Thank you all for being patient and listening.
If you don't mind, please another round of applause for Chika. Thank you so much, Chika, for pointing towards the pathway to reclaiming our narrative. Thank you so much. Like I said earlier on, Chika's writings move ahead of her, and so she's here in flesh and blood to moderate the interactive session. Is a lady with a golden voice, whose own voice has moved ahead of her. Please, I welcome Ifi Melody of Solid FM.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Ifoma Ajumobi, of course, popularly known as Ifi Melody, your sparkling woman on radio, Solid 100.9 FM. It's a great pleasure and honor to be doing this. Chika, it's amazing. And of course, we've been following her works and even her messages on Twitter, online, and now. If you ever try to Google Chika Unigwe on Google, you'll be amazed at what you would find. too much information, too much knowledge that I'm not sure you exhaust in a hurry. Welcome, Chika. Good to have you in Enugu.
Thank
And
you.
of course, it all started in Enugu. It's always coming back to Enugu one way or the other. I'm also honored to be moderating this session because I work with the media, and one of the things I say strongly is that we really do need to own our media. Currently, we don't have something in the terrestrial media that you could say is so strong when it comes to TV in this area. And it's been some sort of a hard cry. So I would ask, why do you think it's seemingly an uphill task for us to own our narratives properly over here?
Well, thank you. Is this work? Yeah. Well, thank you, Ife, for that question. I think we mustn't forget that we're playing catch-up, right? So we had, years of colonization. When people say, well, it's ended, we're still battling with the legacy of all of that, right? And we're sort of trying to negotiate or renegotiate new ways of dealing with that legacy. I mean, we're speaking English now, right? But the good thing is that we've now made English a Nigerian language, right? So, for example, yeah, okay. But the good thing is that we've made English a Nigerian language, right? So, for example, people say I'm eating swallow. Nobody understands I'm eating swallow anywhere except in Nigeria.
Okay.
Or people say, oh, I came to your office severally, to mean several times, right? It's a Nigerian thing, right? And I think the uphill task is because we're still playing catch up. The dominant narrative has been the dominant narrative because the people with the power to share it are the ones, who are deciding, what should be out there and what is not. The important thing is that we are trying to catch up with them, that we are trying to rewrite the narratives. That's the important thing.
Okay. So when we are talking about pushing out narratives that can change perspectives, what should we be looking at mostly?
Everything. Like I said, it starts from the home. If you don't have pride in your culture, you're not going to want to push it, right? If we think that, apple is less important than spaghetti, for example, right? I mean, it's all the little things, because culture is everything, right? It's the food you eat, is what you wear, is what you is how you speak, is what you've accepted as civilized and not. And I'll tell you a quick short story. So many years ago, when I still lived in Belgium, I was invited to a radio show to talk about classical music. And I sent a really nice email back to the producer, and I said, I'm sorry, but I don't do classical music. And I thought that would be the end of it. And a few days later, she sent me a huge carton box full of classical music. And each one, very meticulously labeled. Oh, yellow is for the frolicky one, happy kind of classical music. Blue is for somber. And I was like, okay. And I just gave them to my husband, who does enjoy classical music. And I sent a thank you note to the lady. And 2 weeks later, she gets back to me and she said, oh, did you listen to the music? I said, yes. I lied. And she said, well, you're ready to come on our show.
Wow.
And she said, well, bring 3 CDs, one for somebody who's never played classical music before, one that you really enjoyed, and one that you for our audience at home, and we'll do a live show. So I just took 3 CDs at random, said, okay, I'll just blab some vague stuff about these 3. And I get to this program, live show, and the first thing she says is, when we invited Chika on our show, she said she didn't do classical, or she knew nothing about classical music. So Chika, I assume you had no culture of music growing up. And I thought, how dare you, So I said, well, do you know Fela? She's like, no, who is Fela? I said, do you know High Life? No, who is High Life? I said, do you know Afro-Juju? No, what's that? I said, well, as far as my father is concerned, you're a cultural barbarian. So it doesn't matter that you know Mozart and Beethoven, because you can't tell me, so you don't use your measure of civilization to judge me, right? She wasn't happy. She was pretty upset. But, it's just sort of show you an example of how, when a narrative becomes dominant, we tend to accept it without questioning it, right? So the only right way to eat is with a fork and a knife. Why, right? Anyway.
Okay, I I would call him a friend, and he is a bit popular in Enugu, or he's into entertainment, and he was going by a name that had a clear Igbo identity. And somehow he had to move over to, I think, Lagos, do more with, Western Nigeria, and do things there. And by the time he came back for something here in Enugu, he changed his name and had something all completely English. You can't identify where he's from, based on his name and all of that. I sort of thought it was the same challenge we were talking about. Now, he said because of the environment, he had to do that because it makes him easily acceptable in that new environment. And if he was bearing the former name, people already know where he's from, and some people who are a bit biased tend to cut him off from the job and all of that. What would you say to that person if you met him? And are those challenges real? Do you think they're real, even outside Nigeria?
Yeah. I don't believe in prescribing to adults what they should do, but I do think it's a pity that a grown man, I can't prescribe to adults what they should do. People have their own different, challenges and stuff. But I do think it's a pity that a grown man would shrink himself to adapt to somebody else's convenience, right? So the same, I can't talk to the biases that, he feels would have been applied to him for having an Igbo name. But I do know that the people who are most anxious about adapting are those who feel that they are powerless, right? I don't know, Russians moved to the US, they don't change their names. And I think it was Uza Adupa who said this really, really well, that, if you can pronounce Dostoevsky, you should be able to pronounce any other name. And you see where the power dynamics, come into play. When Obama became president of the United States, the BBC journalists were taking elocution lessons to learn how to pronounce Barack Obama. And these were the same journalists who couldn't pronounce any African president's name because it didn't matter to them. We're not powerful enough, right? Which is why I said that the work starts with us, right? And us also, and us making sure that we don't diminish ourselves or erase ourselves for somebody else's convenience. Let them come to us, let them take us as we are, and not sort of trying to find ways to make our names easier for anybody.
Okay, thank you very much for that. You have been moving between Nigeria and, of course, outside Nigeria, Belgium, America. Do you see these prejudices come up? If you're black and you live abroad, you see the prejudices come up. I remember years ago, when I lived in Belgium, so I had my BA already, I had my master's, and I was taking a break from my PhD. And I wanted a job. So I walked into an employment office. And I said to the woman there, I'm looking for a job. And I expected her to tell me what to do, fill these forms and whatever. But she took one look at me, so a black woman, and said, yeah, we need cleaners and you can start today. I said, well, I need a cleaner too, because I don't like cleaning, so if you find one, send her to me. So there are always these, as a black person navigating the world, there are these burdens placed on you, right? There are these expectations placed on you. There's also the expectation that you represent, the entire black people in a way that is not expected of someone of a different, of a Western or of a white person, for example. You're coming from Igbo land and Nigeria, and you've actually accomplished a lot. Has that given you some power in any way? And given me some power in any way? Then have you been able to use that to influence people's mindset, especially from this side, based on the thought that we are not too proud of who we are and all of that? I don't know. I don't know who I'm influencing and who I'm not. They don't come to tell me anything. But I'm going to answer a different question that you didn't ask.
I believe a lot in service, right? So I believe in giving back in whatever way I can. And one of the things that is least known about me is that I went into politics for a while in Belgium. So my mayor wanted me to run for city council, and they managed to convince me, and I ran, and I won a seat. And one of the reasons why I ran was that I believe that if you're in a position to do something, you should. So it sort of felt irresponsible of me to complain about not being seen, and then having a chance to sit at the table and not taking it. I think that answered your question in a way. Okay.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. At this point, a round of applause for Chika Unigwe. Thank you so much. We will allow the audience ask some questions. We have about 20 minutes to do that, and we'll take most of the questions and she will address them. We'll move on now.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ebero Kionyama. It's exciting to be here to listen to a fellow lioness. My question is for you to share a little with us on what inspired you to write on Black Sister Street. Thank you.
So for those who don't know, Black Sister Street is set in Belgium, and it tells the story of 4 Nigerian sex workers who live and work in Antwerp. And I grew up in a very Catholic home where I couldn't even use words like sex. And so moving from there to a place where sex was very open. So if you take a train and you go past Brussels North, you see the women in display windows, waiting for clients. It doesn't matter what time of day it is. And so when I moved and I discovered that many of the black sex workers in Antwerp were from Nigeria, I became really curious. I wanted to know their stories. And the way I deal with my curiosity is by writing. And to be able to write it, I had to do research. So I went to the red light district and I spoke to the Nigerian women there. And so the inspiration was really curiosity. I wanted to know why you would move so far away from home to service the red light district of a European city. It was just curiosity more than anything else.
Good evening. My name is Uche Osita James. I'm the coordinator of the Jigawa Library Project. I met Chika Unigwe on Twitter. The question is, you are talking about identity, the Igbo identity, and the need to continue to be leaders of excellence in different areas. And then the question is for young people and youths out there in different eastern states. I want to know how we can come in, because some of us are not really in a place of influence and all that, but then how can we still come in? What did you say? Okay, I said that my name is Osita. I'm the coordinator of the Jigawa Library Project and all that. So the question is for us young people, you are talking about the need to establish a strong Igbo identity wherever we go, so that people can continue to see that the reason why we're different and upholding our Igbo values and all that. And this even applies even when we're not in the East, even when we're in other places. So how do young people like us come in? That's what I'm asking. How do young people like us come in?
How young people can help promote Igbo identity? You're promoting it now with your Opu Red, which is really good. It's also, you can help promote it by also rejecting stereotypes, and by not being upset when people call you Okoro, you accept that identity with a lot of pride. There's nothing wrong in being called Okoro, somebody laughing, that somebody has an Igbo accent. And there are lots of, social media is there. There are lots of different ways in which, you can help promote it. Being here is one of it as well, right? So that, there are lots of different ways.
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Uche Excellence Anyachukwu. I am a writer, I'm a poet, and most importantly, I'm a philosopher. I have a question to ask Chika Unigwe. I'm somebody who believes in the power of talent. I don't know about anybody else, but I think here in the Southeast, we are the definers. We are those that make the world turn around. So if we are notorious for bad attitudes, maybe outside or within the country, I think we also have the power to reverse that narrative and show them the stuff that we're made of. For God's sakes, we are genius. We are ingenious, we are creative, we are innovative. All of these things, we are Igbos, we are heroes. So please, I am a creative writer, like I said. Can we establish maybe a body of professors? We have professional writers. Can we establish a body of professors, proof writers that can prove books of people like us? And maybe if they are good, we can even our own awards. We can't wait for people to arrange awards for us. We own our own awards, give our people, promote them, support them, sponsor them, whatever. Just, you know.
I'm so happy to be here today. I have two questions to ask. One of them is, how can the Igbos change the narrative, which I tag as very disturbing to me? That is the issue of traditional marriage and church marriage. It's so disturbing to me that if a young man gets a wife, pay bride price, and do traditional wedding, the society today sees the person as not yet married. Why the person is seen as married if he does the Western culture wedding, which is the church wedding we tag today? So how can we change this narrative that we, the new generation Igbos, see traditional marriage as the real marriage, not where you do the church marriage, which is the Western marriage? Now, the second question I want to ask is that you spoke about the current travails of some young Igbos in different countries due to their internet fraud and other things. I want to state here that young Igbos they have great minds. Looking back at the Biafran War, if you can see what we produced during the Biafra, you can know that young Igbos are great. And if there is a vacuum, definitely something will fill. So what I'm advocating is, in order to curb this internet fraud and so on that young people are going to, there should be another platform where these young, talented, and very intelligent Igbo young people who can easily hack into anywhere and do whatever they can do, so that they can create another platform, so that that ingenuity of post-Biafra, as in that before the Biafra War, will also come to play this new narrative which you wish. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Hello. Good evening. My name is Ozemina Treasure, and I have a question for Mrs. Chika Unigwe. My question is that, as a young writer, how did you conquer the fear to start writing? And did you ever fear that and ask yourself whether people will read your books, whether they make sense?
Yeah, thank you very much for that excellent question. Yes, I mean, even now, I still worry that nobody will read my book. So as a writer, you're constantly plagued with self-doubt. Does that answer your question? Yes. How did I calm the fear? By writing. You just keep writing regardless of, I write through the fear. Even now when I'm writing through fear, because I'm still very, I'm still plagued with self-doubt.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Promise Okuchukwu. I am a student of law, and I'm also the co-founder of Feel.com.ng, an online marketplace based in Enugu. Now, I want to appreciate your presence here, Chika. I'm one of your biggest fans. I've read your books. Now, the question is this. You talked about the industry of the Igbo personality. You also talked about how our brothers are being, abused and, killed abroad. Now, the thing is this, as a result of that industry, many of these persons want a means of survival. Now, as a co-founder, we're always looking for places and, tech persons to facilitate our company, people to grow from, people to learn from. Now, using the media, how do you think that the Igbo nation can enhance this tool, can, bring techpreneurs, people who understand what they are doing, the likes of Facebook, the likes of Twitter, the likes of, Junior, bring these people to come teach the industry, to come enhance that tech industry, to come build that, global brand, starting from the Igbo nation down here. Thank you very much.
How you use social media? Yeah, so thanks for that. I think if Melody and Juliet are already doing it with Ekwibo, right? There's Upuribo. There are lots of ways, by magnifying stories of achievements of Igbo people, by putting out Igbo proverbs, by telling Igbo stories on social media, stories that challenge the dominant narrative.
My name is Ebechku Daniel Libe. So before I begin, I'll start with this Chinua Achebe's quote, which says that not until the lions have their own historian that the glory of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. This means that a normal Igbo man don't know his own story. A man that don't know when the rain starts on him can't tell where to dry himself. This is a point because I'm in university, so I can relate to this. An ordinary Igbo man, an ordinary Igbo guy, don't know the story of Biafra. He can't narrate how it happened. He can't narrate what led to the Civil War. This is a problem on us, and this starts through the family. Our problem is from the distance, from the roots. So my question is, how can we reorientate the mindset of our family so that they can reshape our story, so that they can start from the young, so that they can start from the young stage to give the Igbo mind a narrative complex. Thank you.
So, more important than telling the stories within families is documenting the stories, documenting our own stories, and writing our own history books. So, for example, for a very long time, we referred to still in history books, the About Women's protest and About Women's war is referred to as About Women's riot, right? And it's referred to as About Women's riot because that history was written by the colonial masters, right? And so who didn't want to accept that these women, really knew what they were doing? Because, when you say something is a riot, right, there's no reason to it. It's just a whole bunch of, thugs gathering together and making noise, right? But if you say something is a struggle or a war, it's more tactical. So I think that it's important that we, document these things ourselves, tell our own stories, and use the right words, because words are not innocent. Words are not neutral, right? The way you use words the way you use words shows what you think of a person or a thing, right? And so I think more important than more important than oral history is documenting these histories and making sure that we have, the entire truth and not truth that has been, colored by colonization or colored by somebody else writing these stories for us. I mean, there's a reason why when we think of someone being cosmopolitan, we're thinking of somebody who is traveling who's traveling around in the West especially, right? But a Nigerian who is traveling to Ghana and to Uganda and to Kenya is not seen as cosmopolitan. There's a reason why when we think of immigrants, right, we are thinking of, black people in the West. But we don't think of white people here as immigrants. So when they come here, they're expatriates. When we go there, it doesn't matter what you do. You're an immigrant doctor, you're an immigrant professor, you're an immigrant lawyer. And they come here and they're expatriate workers, right? So words are very powerful. There's a reason why, we refer to deer as game, and then we refer to our own as bushmeat. Those narratives weren't written by us. Those narratives weren't pushed by us. And it's time for us to start pushing back by documenting our narratives in our own, in our own words. No, I don't want to.
Yes, my name is Dr. Ifedi Okwenna, the Director General, World Igbo Summit Group, a former commissioner in Anambra State. Chika is my younger cousin, and I must be grateful for Center for Memories for this kind of opportunity, and for the fact that we have a lot of youths here telling our stories. They are denied of history. And when they come to this kind of gathering, they are made to learn and understand where we are coming from. Mine is a question and comment. I commend Chika for what she is today. Started very early. She was positive in everything she wanted to do, and she has achieved it. But one thing, Chika, I want to find that growing up, just after the Civil War, the Igbos were hiding under this table. They didn't want to call Igbos. You went to the West. That was when racism was high. What motivated you to follow this path, to change the narrative, and to tell our story? Thank you.
Thank you. It motivated me to because I like to. I think that one of the motivations is the fact that I was somewhere where I was first seen as black before being seen as Chika. And that was what really brought it home to me, how very important it is that we tell our own stories, right? Because when we tell our own stories, then we show all the different facets of who we are. And so somebody doesn't just look at you and think, okay, I know this person. Because the narratives are multidimensional, and there are multiple narratives. And I remember reading Things Fall Apart when I was really, really young, right? And for the first time, I read a book where colonization was seen as a disruptor and not as something positive, right? In social studies, you learn that, Mungo Park discovered River Niger. I see the people, who live near the Niger weren't using the Niger, or that, whoever, some young person from the UK, traveled around Africa discovering things and naming things that were already there, right? And I think reading Things Fall Apart for the first time and seeing Okonkwo think of colonization as something that came to scatter a society that already had its own civilization, right, was so powerful to me. It was almost like a spiritual experience. It was so powerful to me, right? And for the first time, I thought of how ridiculous it was, right, that, some lady sat somewhere and named Nigeria, right? And these are things that we could never do. Like we could never do it to them, right? Because the power is very, unbalanced. And we say it still, going on now, right? You have conversations about, especially with the rise of right-wing movements all over the West. You're having conversations about people coming into our country and fitting in. You have to come into our country and fit in. You have to come into our country and adapt. But you come to Africa, and the biggest ghettos are ghettos where, expatriate slave, white expatriate slave. They don't even bother to mix at all. Maybe they know the names of their gate man. Maybe they know the names of the house helps. But they don't know anything at all about the society that they live in. And that conversation isn't being had because power dynamics, being what it is. So I think, and I think that when your narrative is a dominant narrative, there is the tendency to think that your narrative is the only right narrative, and every other thing is wrong. Which is why, you can go on a radio station and tell me, well, you have no culture of music. Because as far as you're concerned, if I don't know your classical music, then I have no idea of classical music. Mine doesn't matter at all, because culturally you've placed a hierarchy, right? Which is also, I remember someone telling me once, oh, you need to learn to eat oysters. And I said, why? She said, well, because it's posh. And I was like, I'm not going to train my palate to eat something I don't like because it's posh. Why is it posh but not goat meat? So these are the ways in which, the insidious ways in which these things, work. And I think having first-hand experience of them much later in life sort of also motivated me to be very aware, of where they're happening and to strongly fight back against them.
Yeah, my name is Ikechukwu Ekenedirichukwu. I'm a student of mass communication at IMT Enugu. My question is based on English language as English as a language of instructions in our schools. But before I ask this question, I want to tell you an experience. One day, I overheard inside IMT hostel, I was walking past the corridor, and two students were debating. The other guy said, a white boy of 17 years is more intelligent than an African man of 70 years. Then, I had a different mentality from what I had now. So I have to reply in what I thought was right. I said, those people that went in, I don't even know if it's a true story, but I answered, those that went to Switzerland and stole at the World Bank, is it not white men that they stole from? Now my question is, the other day in school, we were also debating on this English being the only medium that can take you to success in our modern world. So that is why my question is based on this, English as a medium of instruction. We can say that English is acceptable as a medium of instruction in our schools because Nigeria consists of different ethnicities. And we can also justify that fact by saying if you send your child, if you speak Igbo to your child at home and send him or her to school to start at kindergarten, they will find it hard to start with a new language. Now, how can we survive with this? How can we build, language has a spirit. It's just like in school, when you go to Campus 1, if you use English and tell the old women, Mommy, please change this receipt for me, they might do that. But if you come in Igbo, Mommy, we could change the receipt, they will consider you. So how can we stop this issue of language as a medium of instruction in our school? To start with Igbo, to insert that sense of pride in us at a very young age. Thank you.
And I think that it makes more sense that we, I think that these days, like I said, that the English we speak is Nigerian English. It's very peculiar to us. And I give some examples already, like swallow. Say I'm eating swallow. Nobody else understands it but a Nigerian, right? You say, I came to your house severally and you were not there. Nobody understands it but Nigerians, right? And so I think that we are making English our own. I think that that horse has, bolted a long time ago. But I also think it's very lazy and disingenuous to say that if your child were to learn Igbo first, they would not be able to learn English. And I think that sort of anxiety is the anxiety that is also peculiar to us, because there are, for example, so my husband is Belgian. My kids are, half Belgian, half Igbo, and they speak their father's language fluently. Right? There was no anxiety of, if they were to learn this first, they would not be able to learn, any other language. And they're picking up, 3, 4 languages, And so I think that part of the reason why people say that is also because we've accepted that Igbo is lesser, than other languages. And you see that, UNESCO has Igbo as a language on the brink of extinction, which is ridiculous considering how many Igbo speakers that we have. Even being in Enugu here, I've heard kids growing up in Enugu who don't speak any Igbo, and their English is atrocious, right? And so they're growing up not speaking any language at all, right? But it's true. I remember meeting, I met a 6-year-old girl, last time I was in Enugu. She's just looking at me. So I said, then somebody said, she doesn't hear Igbo, it's only English that she hears. I said, okay, what's your name? She said, my name is Chinanya. I said, okay, Chinanya, how old are you? She said, She started, how old am I is 1 year old. How old am I is 2 years old. How old am I? And she doesn't speak any Igbo. But of course, she also doesn't speak English, right? And sort of seeing that in the heartland of Igbo, in Enugu, was so heartbreaking. Because there's no reason why any child growing up in Enugu should not be able to speak Igbo, especially if the only other language you speak is English, and you don't even speak it at all, you know. So,
okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a question. The students already left. But my question was, Chika and I were colleagues in UNN. And when we got into UNN in 1990, and I'm kind of dating ourselves now, Chika was one of the hottest things on campus. She was slaying, but the slaying was because she had already published a book by the time we got into school. I think it was Teardrops or something. Yeah? A book of collections, a collection of poems or something. Yeah. And it was unreal, you know, that someone in year 1 or year 2 was already published. So I wanted to ask a question which I was hoping the secondary school students will benefit from. You know, what process, you know, did you go through that gave you the confidence? And I think that's kind of the question the young girl, you know, was asked. What process gave you the confidence to think that something you wrote would be read by anyone? Yeah? And I was hoping that some of the young secondary school students could hear your response and that could encourage them, you know, to know that there are different ways to slay than the way we're slaying today. Yeah?
I think people can slay in whichever way is comfortable for them. But what gave me the confidence, I think, and I think I said it today to Ife Melody, that my parents were always very supportive. Like, my dreams were always valid. And my father probably doesn't remember, but I remember being maybe 8 or 9, and we were in the village. And I said I wanted to write a book. And I needed a typewriter, because I thought to write a book meant to type out something. And my father went and found me a typewriter in Osimeni. And so just the fact that all my dreams were validated. I was never meant to feel that, okay, no, you can't do this, or this is too inconveniencing. And I'm really, really, really grateful for that support. Really, really grateful for that.
And Chika's father is here. Okay, my own question would be, but before I do that, someone asked the question or made mention that whether there were bodies where professional writers and authors were coming together. So let me mention that Center for Memories has a book club running, and from once in a while in the month, they gather together to exchange ideas and share books. Then you also have Anna. I don't know if you're aware of it. They're even actually having a convention right now. It gathers authors. They have a branch in Enugu. You also have Enugu Literary Society. It's being championed by Mr. Ken Ike Okere. He's not here. Zonal Director of the Federal FRC and Radio Nigeria. And they've been doing an amazing work, putting young writers, authors together, bringing accomplished ones to share their experiences and tell their stories. Pity Chika will be leaving very soon, but I would have really asked her to be part of that meeting. Every Saturday almost, they have something going on. So there's a body, there's a group. In case you write, you're a creative writer and you're looking for a forum or a network that you can connect with, we have a lot of them. Ask questions. You could ask the front desk before you leave here. They can guide you more on these activities. They happen here very well in Enugu if you're in Enugu. So just to mention that. Then my own question would be, Chika, did you experience Minaj? Minaj is a television that was once around in the Southeast. Okay, you don't know about Minaj. Okay, since you didn't experience it, I can't ask the question. But Minaj was a television station in Obosi, Southeast here, a privately owned station. And I wanted to ask if having such stations on ground, whether it makes any difference in telling our stories, owning our stories, changing the narrative.
I mean, I think it does. I think that once we own the means of production and means of disseminating what we produce and choosing, what we also send out, that of course that's, very significant to helping to shape and to push the narratives that we want to push. But I want to say that this is also not. I think that this conversation is not just being had in Alibo, but probably
it's not just being what?
Had in Alibo,
okay,
but also in other countries that have experienced colonization. So I have a student in my class at the university who is from Kenya, and every time I tell her, so my students have to write me short stories every week, and she has never written me a short story with a Kenyan character, which is really, really annoying, So,
why do you think that is?
I mean, again, I think it's also part of the legacy of colonization. We don't know how insidious and how deep it is until you start seeing, symptoms of it in different places. And I remember teaching a creative writing class at a private school in Port Harcourt some years ago. And these were secondary school students, or elementary school students, I forget. And all of the students in this really posh school, all of them gave me white characters in their stories. And these kids are Nigerian. So I thought, okay, let me switch. And let me switch tactics. And I gave them an opening sentence. I gave them Bola, I gave them maybe Bola or an Igbo name, I can't remember. I gave them a really, traditional, either Yoruba name or Igbo name, I forget which. And they still get, one student still gave me that person with blue eyes and long silky hair. So, we still have a lot of work to do.
Obviously, there's a lot of work to do. We'll be taking the questions back to the audience, but just before we do that, let me make a few comments. The social media is powerful, and that's what young people have these days. Then there isn't too much, it's not rocket science, or it's not too difficult to understand how it works. For many young people here, you can consciously and intentionally put out the right stories on social media. And of course, if you're on Twitter, you can tag people like Chika, Julia Kego. They would always retweet and share. You have Cheta Wanzetu, who's also doing a lot there. So learn how these things work, connect with them, put out the right stories. Most times I see influencers, bloggers, social media marketers who say they are reporting for Alibo or things happening in the Southeast. And you go visit their sites, all you see are stories about Lagos or beyond, and even outside Nigeria. That's what you see most of the time. You hardly find something like Nkata is happening right now. Of course, it's voluntary. Why can't you connect and just push out that story that there's something called Nkata happening right now? Identify great things happening in Alibo, consciously and intentionally push it out. You talked about Ekwendibo, and somehow it was out of the fact that it seems as if we don't collaborate so much around here, especially in the media. And Judith saw that because she's always online, and it was some sort of a burden. And she said, what can we do to at least start rectifying this particular issue? And Ekwendibo came together like a group of social media bloggers and influencers. We're not yet there, but we're somewhere. And a few times we've done some things online, and people were able to, notice what's going on. If you're telling some stories happening in Enugu, of course, we hope it can diversify to other states and all of that. But that is what most young people here can consciously do. You have to be very intentional. Be intentional, connect with the right people, and tell these stories online. Of course, we know how social media works. It's uncontrollable. Once people see what you're doing is good, that you have good content, they latch onto it and it moves on like wildfire. So why can't you intentionally keep pushing out stories of good things going on around you, where you are, out there online, and let people identify with that? So I'll just add that to what Chika has been saying so far. We'll take more questions from the audience.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. We've spent a better part of this evening talking about our narratives, our story, and during your lecture, you try to dimension it. But I just want to ask, in a few words, maybe a sentence or two, what is that Igbo narrative? What is that Igbo story? Is there a single story? Does it even exist? Is it evolving? And we are holding on to a time past, a glorious time past. So, I mean, can you share with us in your own words, just what is that Igbo story that exists?
Thank you, Nana, for that. I think I touched on what, our traditional values are when I talked about the seven, what's it called? Seven something, I've forgotten. But, I mean, you can't essentialize an entire people, and that's my point. You can't, call an entire group of people swindlers and 419ers and drug peddlers. But these are the images that constantly pop up these days when we talk about Igbo. And my point is that these are the, 80 Igbo people, caught in the US, indicted in the US, do not represent entire Igbo land. I should not feel responsible for them. You shouldn't feel responsible for them. There are just 80 people who did what they did out of how many millions of people. And so my point is really that you can't condense an entire people and put these stereotypes on them, and we don't have to accept those stereotypes. It was very confusing to me right after the FBI indicted those 80 men to see lots of people on social media saying, well, we also have 80 Igbo people doing well. Let's write a list of 80 Igbo people doing very well. That's ridiculous, right? You don't take responsibility for 80 people who just did what they did. They don't represent Igbo. And so my point is that we shouldn't also accept that these are the people who represent us, because Igbo are varied, right? It's like what's happening in the States, right? So one black person does something, or a Mexican does something, or some other minority group, and everybody else is supposed to be responsible for that person and apologize for that person, right? And a white kid shoots up a church and it's mental health and it's just this one person, and no, he was such a good boy, right? So these narratives are they're very consciously built up, and so we should also be very conscious about dismantling them and not accepting them.
Dr. Chika, Unigwe, I want to celebrate you for doing an awesome job. I want to also celebrate you as a lioness. I'm a lion too. My name is George Emetuche. I am the convener of Nigerian Sales Conference. I'm a published author of 7 significant books. I live in Lagos. For the past 3 months, I've been off, and I've been coming into Enugu and going out because of the conference. We held it last Friday, and it was awesome. But what I noticed something that is very significant. I think there is a disconnect between the now generation and the older generation. I will recommend that if we find, like Nkata what you are doing, if we find a platform for mentoring the youth. When we held that conference last Friday, I saw hungry youths, people hungry, they have beautiful ideas, but they lack direction. if we come together as a people and give the older generation, people that have been there, if they come together to show these young people the way to go, I think we'll get there faster. What I also see is a situation where onye kwafelu osisi ndị ọzọ ifuzikwa ụzọ bịaba. I think we can do it better collectively. Thank you.
James Eze, by the way. And yeah, finally we meet. Thank you, my beautiful sister. Well, my question is simple. It's very clear to every one of us that Nigeria's best and brightest actually live outside the shores of this country. And it's been going on for years now. Earlier today, I was at the opening ceremony of the ANA Convention, where Professor Ernest Emenyonu spoke. And he told us that he had been a professor for 40 years. And what struck me was, he is a professor for 40 years outside the shores of this country. What a loss. I have also met some Nigerians in the diaspora. And each time I encounter their genius, I wonder, I say to myself, what a loss. If these people were home, wouldn't we have built a better, stronger, perhaps more prosperous society? I also know that in recent times, there have been some kind of exchange. Okay, Nigerian doctors, people in the medical practice, have been visiting home more often in recent times. And they've been playing their role, helping with, taking care of our ailing populations here. So, but the question is there a way, that we can have a more sustainable structure that will enable people like you to come and fertilize the dreams of so many people in this country, so many younger ones, and even older ones like us? Because we would like, when you encounter, there are people that you meet you don't need so many encounters. There are people you meet once and your life changes. I mean, we love the Western Union, all the money you guys send to us. But we want a little more. And my question is, how do we, in your thinking, create a more sustainable exchange, a more robust engagement between Nigeria and the Nigerian diaspora, especially people like you? Thank you very much.
Thank you, James, for that question. But I think Nigeria's best and brightest are still here. I don't know how you can look at Patrick and then Nana and Diffie and think of Chikwe Kwazu and, Ndidi Nwuneli and, all these people and think that Nigerians' best and brightest are outside the shores of the country. I think they're here and they're working, and we need to encourage them. We need to make sure that their work is made easy for them, or easier for them. So that's one. So I don't agree that Nigeria's best and brightest are abroad. I think they are here. And how do you create more sustainable platforms? I mean, that's such a big question for me to answer. I have no idea. I think, what's happening here. They're writing workshops in Nigeria. I spoke to someone recently who is thinking of having a project where he brings in Nigerian achievers from abroad to speak to young people in schools in Anambra State. The project is still very new. It's just, conversation, so I can't say more about that. But there are things happening, and I think that people living, it's not a loss because we come back, right? We live and we come back and we bring what we've, I don't know if Febe killing Mau. So we go there, we watch the Mau and we come back and we share what we've learned.
There are two questions I want to ask. First one is concerning the fact that you are successful English and Dutch writer, which is something noteworthy because I know what it takes to learn new language, and you did not just learn the Dutch language, learned how to write in Dutch. So what I want to ask was, how easy was the, writing, going from English to Dutch, how easy was it for you? And if there were any challenges or anything that helped you become a better writer in Dutch? And then the second question, well, I don't see of literary works in Igbo. And my question is, are there challenges people face when they write in their local language? What can be done to encourage writers to write more in the Igbo language? Or is it just that there are no demands for it? People don't want to read works in Igbo language? Thank you.
I think that you sort of answered your second question yourself. There's very little demand for writing in Igbo because anybody who can read Igbo probably reads better English, right? I remember when I was in secondary school in Abuja, and we had to learn enough French to write an essay in French. And then in our last year, we had Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba added, but we were only supposed to learn how to count from 1 to 10 in those three languages. And I think that, again, back to the legacy of colonization, in many good schools, right, which is probably still the same thing now, if you speak in your local language, you're punished. So there was this stigma, the stigmatization of local languages have to stop. That's one. And I was very happy to read that Imo State has just made Igbo language compulsory in schools, in all schools. That's also one way that the government can help to push curricula that encourages, the use of local languages. And what were the challenges of learning Dutch? Well, it's unlike English. It's unlike any other, very much unlike Igbo. So I had to learn to shape my mouth a different way to speak it, and I had to learn to think a different way to write it. But necessity is the mother of, not the mother of invention, but the mother of learning. So I was in a place where I had to learn it if I wanted to be a part of the society. And it was because I learned Dutch that I was able to, become a city councillor. And I'm still very proud that, so in the city where I lived, where I became the city councillor, I was the only and still the only non-Western city councillor in that city. So whoever else is coming after me. And, so I think that it's an enrichment. And if you don't know, I also believe that if you don't know the language of a place, you don't really know the worldview of a place. You don't know, to understand, a person's worldview, you have to know the language. Language is a very big clue, And it was also important for me to be able to speak to my parents-in-law.
Hello, my name is Clifford Mwogu. I'd like to speak on two things. One is about the narrative, changing the narrative, and the second one is about the book itself. It's a simple thing to do, trying to change the narrative, as long as we put our cards on the table and try and find out where the problem might be. During the time of early days of internet, I was opportune to be among those that designed a website. And I could remember that when we did that, if you access a site, that site will remain in your computer. But these days, they've changed it, that if you access a site, immediately you switch off, except there is a cache. And that cache will last for some period, for some time. So when we had the earlier design of the internet. As long as somebody has accessed your site, your website will still be there. So what am I trying to say now is that when we say we need to keep the narrative in our own way, where do we have the narrative? It is like the elder ones. We should let them to live and not to die, because that is where the whole thing is locked up. So I'm trying to say that if you have elderly people in your village or wherever, go close to them and make sure that you help them to live on. And because if they die with the rate that we are having it today, it's likely that we're going to lose that narrative that we're trying to protect. And secondly, talking about the book, I've seen your book. The first thing I read, I'm very voracious about it. I want to read more. But I'm trying to understand that you're giving information about Igbos living in a diaspora. It's a very good thing to do. And having lived abroad myself, I think it's good. So that when our younger ones are going up there, let them know what they are going to face. So you've done a very good work, and I congratulate you for that. And finally, when it comes to the platform, I wrote a book titled Occupier's Value, published on Amazon. And in that book, I have an innovative there, where I have activity pages at the back of the book, meaning that after you have finished reading, you can put a note that someone else can read. If it's in a library, it becomes a new platform. I also work on things that we have we didn't actually get into, then we skip that. We are now onto platforms on the internet.
If you Google beautiful baby, right, the picture you see of a beautiful baby is of a white baby, not a black baby. Because when those algorithms were being made, there was, we went at the table, right? And this is how narratives are created and spread. So if beautiful baby is a white kid, what does this say about, our black babies? So as long as we are not at the table where these decisions are being made and where these algorithms are being written, would always be at the margins of it rather than at the center of the narratives.
Hello, sorry, I'm here. Namde Nabike Mbajiogo. Chika Unigwe was our student. Now let me say this, the young people here, you can see they are not in a hurry to go. The reason is that they're looking for a solution to the problem of their generation. I have two short questions. One is, can Nkata Mwebe do a questionnaire to address what is the exact need of these young people until we begin to address issues that we solve the problem that bring them here every month? We will fail the objective of this gathering. That's number one. Number two, Chika talked about Igbo musical lyrics that celebrate the very best of our identity. And I wasn't particularly happy when she gave example of Flavor, because Flavor was also, listen to this, Flavor is my boy. I was also consulting for Chris Odo. Flavor's mother will come and take her out of Chris Odo's studio. I will go back to Flavor's house and ask the mother to hand Flavor over to me, and I'll take him back to Chris Odo. He also came to UNN and started a diploma. But I beg to say that Flavor doesn't represent the best of our identity, particularly with his early music. Thank you. Let me mention to you a few of the musicians that I think represent some of the best of our Igbo identity. I have Osita Sadebe Celestine Oku, Mike Ejiara, Ned Cheto, and so many others. Thank you.
Yeah. Split that sentence into two. So I mentioned Flavor, Obunibo, Fino, who sing in Igbo and center our language, I said. And then I said that our Igbo musicians should sing lyrics that celebrate the best of our Igbo identity. So these were two different, what's it called? Two clauses? Yeah, but anyway, so I did that very consciously. So I didn't say that flavor represents the best of our Igbo, that flavor's lyrics represent the best of our Igbo identity. I said that flavor, Obulibo, Fino, sing center Igbo, and so that it's nice to be at an airport and hear Igbo, being blasted from the speakers. And then I said that Igbo musicians should also sing lyrics that celebrate the best of Igbo identity, because frankly, there are certain flavor songs that I cannot bring myself to dance to or to listen to because I find them misogynistic.
Biko abụ Maazị Ọdịnaka Chukwu ụka abam Ugocha. Enwere ihe m chọrọ ịjụ. Biko amachaghị m asụ Bekee. Onwe ihe m chọrọ ịjụ. Ọ Igbo ka m na-ama asụ ọfụma. Ka nsọ nke m ma asụ biko nụ. Ọ ka mma ide akụkọ anyị na Bekee ka ọ bụ n'okwu Igbo. Maka na ama m na asị omenala ndị dịbara ndị ka nke anyị wee dịrị anyị. O nwere ọtụtụ ihe dị n'omenala na ọdịnala anyị. Ị ga-eje n'omenala ndị ọzọ ịma mfụ ya ebe ahụ. Idebezi akụkọ iji wepụtacha ntụmịrịkọdụ na omenala na ọdịnala ndị. Ịhụ na o nwere mkpụrụ okwu dị iche iche ya bụ idekata n'asụsụ ọzọ. Ị chọbazi ihe ị ga-eme mgbe na-ajụ. Ọka mma ide akụkọ anyị, a na-ekwu gbasara akụkọ anyị ọka mma idie n'olu ndị ọzọ, n'olu ka ọha, ka ọka mma n'olu mba bụ asụsụ Igbo. Nke ọzọ bụ, o nwere okwu ikwu banyere ndị bụ Bekee, ha sị na ha amaghị Igbo. Nke ọzọ bụ na Bekee ha na-asụ abụghị Bekee. Ya ọpụta na onwe ha asụ ha ma. Kedu ihe kpatara ihere ji eme anyị iburu ụzọ mụta asụsụ anyị? Maka dịka onye nchọcha, ama m na ọ na-eme onye bụ ụzọ mụta olu mba, ọ na-enyere ya aka iji mụta olu ka ọha ọfụma. Nke atọ abụrụ ihe m hụrụ ebe a, biko nụ cherekwe dịka onye nkụzi. Ebe ọ bụla m hụrụ ihe ọnụ na-ezighị ezi, ana m atụchapụta ya. Ihe a nọ nyadụ nkata ụmụ ibe, mana ihe ederebe ahụ nkata ụmụ ibe. Nkata ụmụ ibe. Ihe m ji kwuo biko ka e neruo ya anya ma degharịa ya, maka ọ na-adị m ihe amamesi mee ya ọfụma.
No, answer first. Oyibo anyị na-asụ bụ Igbo ka anyị na-asụ n'oyibo. Igbo ka anyị na-asụ n'oyibo. So, onye mara ede Igbo dee n'Igbo. Mepụta ya ka agụọ, onye makwa na-ede n'oyibo dee n'oyibo. Nke ka mkpa bụ na a na-agụ ya agụ na ife a na-ede bụ ife na-akwado ala Igbo na omenala Igbo. Maka nkata Igbo mmenye nna na Patrick kafaza ya. Ọ bụrụ mụ ade nke afọ.
Nwanne daalụ na ajụjụ ịjụ. Anya na the message I send out maka event a. Efu na anyị super ọfụma. Icheke ihe niile anyị na-ezipụ, ozi niile anyị na-ezipụ maka nkata ụmụ ibe a. Efu na the rikomawa dị n'enu ya na-edozi ya ligi ya. Ife ma o ji wee ka dị otu a bụ na anyị niile ibiyali bana ya wee dozie ya, a na-eche ego. Ịma na ọ Buhari na-achị. Ọ bụrụ mgbe dịka anyị aka afụgo ego wee biyalịa ya, mana ebezia pịsịa ihe niile n'idi ime, bịazịa gbakọ maka bana, asị bana ya ka kwụrụgodu ka emee ndị nke ọzọ. Mana ọ nwekwa ka mmụọ si wee nuo ogo inye anyị mma nwoke eji eme ife a tupu ịbịa ebe anụnwa n'ọnwa ọzọ ịfụ na anyị echenjeni ya. Mana ọnwa ajụjụ ọzọ ịjụ nsị ka nyelụ Chika akaza ya. Otu ọbụla isi wee tụne ya iji asụsụ Igbo wee na-ede akụkọ anyị bụ ebe ọ makalịsị. Mana nsogbu dịkwanụ bụ na Igbo anyị na-asụ nwegasị atụmatụ dị anya dị mfe ịkọwa n'ọnụ oyibo. A na-eke enwero asụsụ Igbo eji akọwa ya. nsogbu dị ebe a bụ na anyị aka enwere ihe dịka n'Igbo Academy ga na-ene anya na ụmụ ọ dịka ịba na sayensị kịta enwere certain science words bụ na ịchọọ ịkọwa ya n'Igbo ị ga-eji sentence na-abụ wee kọwa ya. Ịchọọ ikwu maka teknọlọji ịkpọ ya teknụzụ ọ dabara maka na ị na-eche maka ozu ọka. Mana ọ bụ na ka ịkọwa information and communication technology ị ga-eji sentence ịtọ. Mana ọ bụ na anyị nwere Igbo Academy, Igbo Academy ga-ewepụtala anyị the asụsụ anyị ga-eji wee kọwa ya. Ịsụọ ya na Ebonyi onye Ebonyi aghọta, ịsụọ ya na Delta onye Delta aghọta. I hope na answer your question.
I wanted to ask a question to which you alluded to earlier. How do you negotiate, or how did you negotiate in your household what language to raise your kids in? I ask because my wife is British, and I'd like my children to be, at least to learn how to speak Igbo. How did you negotiate in your household what language to raise the kids in? Thank you.
Question, but also somewhat embarrassing question, because to my shame, so with my youngest, I started off in Igbo. So until he turned 3 and started school, he knew only Igbo. And I think he knew English as well. And once he started school, he forgot all of his Igbo. And continued with Dutch, because we were living in a place where Dutch was a dominant language. It's his father tongue, right? And his grandparents spoke Dutch to him. But it was also important to me that they could talk to my parents and talk to my friends. So they also speak English. And now they say that they understand Pidgin. And what really makes me happy is that my kids call me and they're like, oh, I just met somebody whose name is Chi whatever, you know, and he's from Nigeria, right? And there was a time, just a quick story. So my eldest was working as a cashier when he was in high school. He was working as a cashier at a supermarket. And he met someone at the till, and he said, where's the accent from? And the person said, Nigeria. And my son said, are you Igbo, Hausa, or Yoruba? And the person said, I'm Igbo. My son said, my mom is Igbo too. And the person said, where is your mom from? My son said, Osumeni. And the person said, oh, my wife is from Osumeni too. And turned out to be someone that we knew. And I was so proud when he came home and he told me, and I'm so proud of how they closely associate themselves with being Igbo as well as with being Dutch. How do you negotiate it? It's really difficult to negotiate which language to speak at home, but you have to be consistent, right? So once you're consistent, the kids don't get confused. And just sort of, be consistent with it. Your wife speaks English and you speak Igbo to them and be consistent with it, they'll pick it up. There's one Ocha who's in Switzerland, whose kids, speak Igbo and really put me to shame. So.
Thank you very much, Chika. This is where we'll round off on the moderated session at Nkata Unigwe. Thank you, Center for Memories, for making this happen every first Friday in the month. Thank you.
Please, another round of applause for Chika. Thank you very much. Thank you for being a great audience. Thanks for coming on time, and thanks for staying to this point. We are very grateful to Chika for coming all the way from Atlanta to share with us. Please, another round of applause for her. And to you for always joining us every first Friday of the month for the Nkata Umibe series. In a few days, we will announce the speaker for December. I bet you're going to like the speaker, so please look out for that. And on that note, I say thank you from all of us at Center for Memories, and see you again next month. Thank you.